Today's a special episode of the Eye of Power podcast where I welcome my brother and partner, Greg Dardick, to the show. It's one of the best things that I can think of that could have possibly ever happened to me in my journey with the Eye of Power to have Greg join the team. We talk a bit about his background and how it came about that it made sense for that to happen this year. And so uh, I'm absolutely thrilled. And you'll kind of see why I'm thrilled, I think, through our conversation. So without further ado, please welcome Greg Darter to the Eye of Power podcast. Welcome to the Eye of Power podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dardick. But this podcast is not about me. It's about you and your power. It's time to claim yours. So one of the things, Greg, that I'm super happy about is that you are a member of the Eye of Power official team, and you're able to bring your expertise, not only your technical expertise, being a CTO, but really also your your kind of superpower is, yes, the technical side, but really it's your experience with managing effective teams and building people up and developing people. And let's just take a moment to sort of walk through your career and your life that brought you to this moment, and then we'll get into why it made sense for you and I to team up at this particular
Yeah.
juncture. But really, what I want to do is give people an idea of your path through the professional world.
Yeah, sure, Tom. And I'm excited to share. And first of all, I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of the Eye of Power. And like you're talking about, it is a kind of a culmination, and you have like these culmination points in your career and fork roads in your career. And I'll talk a little bit about some of mine. That where things just kind of make sense and you kind of have to pick a path and things kind of come together. And one thing that I've seen in my life is just be open to the change that's around you. Be open to the possibilities. Be open. Keep an open mind. Keep looking at the things that are going on around that. And so this is one of those times in my life that I just feel. So I'm super excited about that and feel like I'm going to learn and contribute, which is the big
Well,
goals in life. Continue both of those things.
that's a great point. And again, I walk when we finally came together, I was walking around on air for quite some time, but I still do when I think about it. But you mentioned something there that I want to get back to the story and your path,
Yeah.
but I want to put a pin in that because you started off stressing the being open to possibilities, open to things that happen. And sometimes people let things go by out of whether they feel like they're stuck, trapped, they're fearful to make it change. What
Yeah.
helped you? What do you see both for the positive and the negative forces that can keep us either from going down a path that we think we would help us
Yeah.
or avoiding one? Or what do you think the stakes are and what those dynamics, Greg?
Well, those are great questions. And, at the end of the day, those are things that we all struggle with and are things you kind of have to look in the mirror on because all these forks and these decisions are big points in your life to kind of listen to that you have to make yourself available for and think about, right? Like you said, there's risks in everything that we do. And I'll talk a little bit more about those and some of the risks or that I've both taken and risks that I've not taken doing something different. And so it's really kind of listening to your inner voice, kind of looking at what's going on. And, for me, Tom, it's always been about harmony in my life. So it's always been about what's gonna maximize my growth, harmony, and make me ultimately those things lead to happiness and fulfillment,
When
I
you say
believe.
harmony, do you mean the needs of, say, your boys, your wife, your
Yeah, exactly. It, it's
the
it's
musical
the
side of yourself, all the aspects of life that matter to you?
Yeah, it's the harmony of all those things. It's the harmony of the environment and the people around me and the people I care about and the things I want. Life's a balance, right? You're constantly balancing all of those things. And what's right in my balance is not right for somebody else in their balance.
Yeah.
So finding those things. And we talk about harmony and you and I are both musicians. We look at the nature of making music and what it makes for good harmony among music. It's a similar concept, right? It's about finding those things that are going to bring that joy and that sense of expression. Because so not all expressions joy, right? We have lots of feelings of things that we do around that, and that's the interesting thing about harmony. There's dissonance. There's other things that kind of go with those things when you look at it, and what do you want?
You know,
So
that's a great analogy because music that is just, the same three notes that are over and over, the exact note that's going to come. Yeah, it can be useful and it can be good, but it can also quickly get boring and tired and stale. And we humans don't like that. It's often in this case of listening to great music is it's that surprise note, it's that surprise chord, it's that
yeah,
surprise element that adds a flavor. And I think it's analogous to life too.
yeah. It's funny you say that. I think about the Beatles and John Lennon's kind of comment at the end of the Beatles. It's like he just felt the same thing. It's like we were playing the same blues chords that we played our whole time, and what else did we have to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a four
Of course,
point for that.
if he's using that as a criticism of the Beatles, when you look even early on at how they didn't really stay in the lines on their chordings, their phrasings, they would go
Yeah.
all over the place. So for him to feel that way is really saying something.
Well, it is, but it was a point just saying that they weren't growing, right? It was a
Yeah,
point where
that's
something
it.
new needed to happen, and it was a fork, right? It's another thing they could have easily kept on doing that, but it was another fork possibility. So it's another thing kind of we're talking about here in those. So let me kind of get back to a little bit about
Yeah,
my story.
please let's get back. I mean,
I'll
you
start.
you you
I'll
you
start
started
pretty
with
early.
an
I'll start early on, and I'll really start. The formative things for me. Where first one was when I bought myself a TI 99, and I learned to program. And
Mm.
so I taught myself how to program. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to play a game. And so I had a TI 99. I got a magazine. I learned like how to type. I typed in the stuff and I started figuring out what's going on, and I wanted to change some of it. So I taught myself how to basic on how to program. And then I took a class in high school, and the class was around basic, and I'd already had it, and so I had an aptitude for it. And I could tell right away that I had a really big aptitude for it. And that was a fairly simple class. And then I took another class on Fortran, and that
Mm.
was I hadn't known anything about it. But what really started opening eyes about that was, hey, listen, this is a business thing. This is like I had lots of aspirations and dreams, right? So I was in psychology, philosophy, business, computers. Like I had just a lot of interest in my life, and I quickly realized that, hey, if I do this, I can probably go work for any company I want to. And
Yeah,
so that's what really kind of pushed me for doing that and my natural ability, right? So you look at the paths you take, you're trying to align those natural abilities with the possibility that's out there. And I feel pretty lucky that I found something that I liked and I knew I was pretty good at.
can I ask a question there before we
Sure.
move on in time? Back then, there wasn't a ready-made game world that anybody could sort of jump into. You saw that you could make a game and open up the possibilities, but it was compared to today, it was sort of a desert back then as far as the games. What were you thinking when you started in with the TI 99, and what kind of games were you thinking of maybe
But there,
doing? And
I remember exactly the game that I first learned to program was Frogger. So it was
Frogger, okay.
it was a simple game that had stuff moving around, and then I figured out, hey, I could redo some of the what the things look like, and I kind of just messed with that.
For those that might be younger, they might not appreciate how amazingly cool even
Yeah.
simple video games back then when they first came out, like Asteroids and Frogger and things like that, were they seemed almost magical.
Oh, they did. I mean, you think about the first things that we saw, they were like these little blips, right? So you had like Pong that
Yeah,
like you
Pong, yeah.
would go up and down and the things would go like this. And then you had like this tank thing, which was other things that were in the way of the ball going somewhere that were
Right,
the
right.
ball. There were all variations of like this little thing moving around and you're trying to hit it and some kind of thing like that. And that's how much fun we had looking at that and playing with those things and just the sparking of the imagination of those things. So
Okay, so it's fun, it's neat. And then you jump into that water and you find, hey, I get this. This makes sense to me. I can
yeah.
actually do this. And then you go the path that you did with a little bit deeper. They even brought you to Virginia Tech.
Yep, exactly. And when I got to Virginia Tech, I just remember one of my hardest classes at Virginia Tech was a second CS class where it was kind of one of those weed out classes, and
Oh,
you had to do difficult things. So, like on one of my exams, you learned about linked lists, which are just how to kind of group certain relationships together. And then on a test, you had to figure out how do I do a search? And you never even been taught what's a binary tree, which is basically you have instead of just having a linked list, you have lists that are connected to multiple things.
Mm.
And we had to figure out an efficient algorithm search to do that on a test. And
Wow.
being able to come with that, I'm like, yeah, I know how to. I'm good at this. Like I figured out an innovative way to do it because it's a lot about problem solving, right? So it's
Mm.
exciting about that. It was also computer theory. So there was my philosophical nature was interested about like what's computable. I remember having classes saying, are we going to invent things that are not predeterministic? Like, can we invent something that we don't know what the outcome will be or would know? And it's funny because we're now at that stage right now is they're still struggling with that with the AI building.
Right. Even this week, I saw a little blurb on social media, quote by Noam Chomsky, who, among other things, his main claim to fame was that he, what was it, master linguist, right?
Yeah.
Understood languages. And so he's saying, look, we should stop calling it artificial intelligence. It's not intelligence. It's basically a big plagiarism engine, which just goes out, finds things, and puts them all together. It's not creating anything. It can't create
Yeah.
anything new. It doesn't work anything like what a human brain does. So he thinks it's confusing to call it artificial intelligence. What do you think of that thought, Greg?
It is in a certain sense. I mean, what really started some of the AI concepts, and even back when I was studying college, I talked about AI, and I learned things like neural nets. And so the neural nets were the first things to really take how does brain work and how does it brain process information, kind of puts this fuzziness together where you have strength of connections and what
Hmm.
path to follow for making decisions. And so a friend of mine was into it. He was a super bright guy who taught me some of the stuff, and we started writing chess programs. So we were writing
Okay.
chess programs with neural nets to try to have it learn to play chess and how to play better chess. And so, like you're right, Tom, it's not like it's thinking; it's traversing paths of things to look at, put together. Now you put this on massive scales. We have so much information and so much processing happening at once. Does intelligence emerge out of that? I honestly don't know at the end of the day. I think we're gonna wait and see what happens.
So
Um,
that so
it's
that
not
die is
it's not
spinning, basically.
it's die the die is spinning. I mean, I don't know if there's to call it intelligence right now. You look at the Turing test. The Turing test is basically
Can't even
something's
tell the
artificially
difference.
intelligent is like if I can sit down and talk with it and converse with it, I can't tell the difference, then might as well be intelligent because I can't tell the difference. It was a very practical means of looking at those things, and even when he did it, he knew it was kind of that way, but it was one dimension to be able to check whether some things are not because what's real? It's our perception to be able to say what's out there anyway, right? So he used that as kind of an arbitrary test for this.
Even things such as randomness,
Yeah.
that may be an illusion of a limited perspective, right? So
Well, it's
what
funny because you have random generators and computers that aren't random, like you said. Like we simulate close to it. They're basing off lists. They'll take time. They'll divide things. There's hashing functions. There's other functions you can do to try to replicate and create random numbers, but they're really not random.
Yeah. All right,
And
so let's keep moving in time here.
so out of school was my first really kind of major career choice. Similar to you and me, I got graduate college, and our brother Scott had started up a business. And it was just a good time. So I had I'd finished college, didn't need to do anything, and he needed help starting up a business. So we started up a business. He was doing installation for fast food timing systems.
I'd
Uh,
forgotten that you got involved in that. Wow. You were
yeah,
involved before me then.
I was involved before you. So again, it was timing wise where it was kind of looking at this. And at that time, I was still writing kind of programs on the side. I had written this one program on the Apple. I taught myself how to program the Apple, which was very complicated. I got crazy books and stuff. It was a very closed system that you kind of need to learn to do stuff. And
Mm.
I wrote an app that slowed down the computer so I could beat games. I think there's one game that was so tough to beat. So I did this thing where I had to tweak it so it ran the right speed to be able to slow down, and I could just like crush all the scores on it. So I put it out there as a where for something like that. It was kind of
So
fun.
in other words, characters that you're fighting or something would move really slow, give you
in
time to
this in
adjust.
this one it was like a space thing where you're kind of moving through this cave in this space thing. All the stuff would be coming at you, and it was fast. It was going every which way. But when I slowed the thing down, it was easy. You could navigate it all slowed down. It became really easy to beat.
So it was like that scene in Quicksilver in the Avengers where everybody's doing all this crazy stuff
Exactly,
and
exactly,
he's like
exactly.
moving things. Everything's like standing
Exactly.
still.
So with Scott, he needed a hand, and so we started up kind of doing this, and he had found a good position where it was he got to a point where he was able to try to, and he worked with you and dad to try to raise money to kind of buy out the company that he was being, that he was selling this product for and installing them. And at that time for me, I had a choice to make. And my choice was listen, I went to school for computer science. I want to do this. And I knew that if I didn't go back into it, I might not ever do it. And so I got a job at Stoner Associates, and it was an engineering company, which was a very formative thing for me. They're doing engineering for hydraulic analysis. This is water, gas, electric utility companies. And
Okay.
so the founders and everybody on there were all engineers. So all the principals in the companies were all kind of engineers. You kind of come in as a developer, and I don't want to say you're a second class citizen, but I worked there for a couple of years and realized that listen, like if you're going anywhere in this company, you're an engineer. They don't really expect you the same way. Um,
Right.
but I did learn a lot about software, which was interesting, and object-oriented software, which has really pushed the development of new languages and other things moving forward from. And luckily, it was funny. I was hired there as a tester. I was there. I worked as a tester for all I think a week and a half. They gave me this set of string libraries, which are string manipulations, like characters you put together and do things. They're here, test this, and they're like, "You're not going to find anything." I found all these obscure bugs with it. I'm like, okay, he needs to be a developer. He's like, I found one really bizarre thing that was actually a big error that they were overwriting memory. In languages today, there's less of this because this was where you kind of overwrite memory buffers, and there was bugs in their program that where things were getting overwritten and they didn't even realize it.
So
So
that saved some heartache and some chasing
they
down the
started
rest of
exactly. So I did some graphics programming using a library, a graphics library. So it was math intensive. It was cool stuff that we were doing. Think of it as a GIS system, which is like a CAD. It's like a CAD system where you draw engineering, only it has graphical information stuff around it. Then put in the back end of it all this hydraulic analysis engine all written in Fortran. So it was cool stuff I was doing. So it was kind of neat. And it was really when there was a transition from what was mainframes, and they were writing things on what were called mid frames, which were like all IBM and HP systems. And right as I was getting ready to leave there, the home system started getting fast enough to start doing smaller models. So they
Hmm.
were then starting to move from this Unix systems to actually Windows and some other stuff.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
and then at that time, I just happened to see an ad. I don't know. I was looking around, and there was a guy named Marty Shostall, who was one of the principals in developing SNMPT, which is the protocol of the internet, and he was a professor at RPI. He had started up a company that was like UUNet, which was and was PSI, yeah. And they were the first one to wire all the internet. So he was one of the early internet pioneers. Made a ton of money. He sold PSI Net Stadium. The Baltimore Stadium was named PSI Net Stadium at one point. That's how big the company was.
Yeah.
He made a fortune there, but he lived in Pennsylvania. He bought a farm and had a farm out there, and he turned into a venture capitalist. And so one of the pet companies that he had was a game company, and my background in games, so it was fascinating to me. So I left. This is the first big risk for me. I left what was a very good career job, and I remember them trying to talk me not into leaving to do something I had passion for. I'm like, when am I going to be able to do this again? And go
Yeah.
have some fun and do something. And it was a lot to learn in that company because it was a small company. So I got to see every aspect that was going on in the business. Snow Associates was like 100 people company. There was division in the UK. So it was a medium smallish kind of company. And I went to a startup, so it was a very small company, dealing with all sorts of different things. And that had its own kind of flavor of things as the internet was changing very fast. And this was the dot-com bubble
Yeah.
around that time. And so my big claim to fame there really was building an internet advertising engine inside all these applications. And
Hmm.
so that was kind of the core technology. Eventually, the company ceased to be a game company and just was selling its advertising infrastructure for games. So we were one of the first ones. In fact, we were one of the first things to start showing up as spyware
Is
initially
that
because
right?
of stuff that we were doing. Yeah, because we were getting online to download ads. Like we're showing ads when you were offline. So when you got online, we'd figure that out. We'd go download a bunch of ads, and then we're offline. We're still showing new ads when we can. And so it showed up as kind of crazy behavior on your computer. And it was just a very fun job. You had things like, one day comes, okay, here's an application, on any of the source code, we have to show ads in it. What do you do? So that was the problem of the day. So that's a pretty big problem, right? How am I going to show ads? I can't compile this. I can't do anything to change this thing. So what do you start doing? So the
I have the
first thing we
slightest
did,
idea.
the first easy idea was, okay, I'm going to make a new program. I'm going to embed the other program in it. I steal all of its icons and everything. I'll launch my program, I'll show an ad, launch the program, and then I'll monitor that program. When that program goes away, I'll show another ad and then I'll go away. And so that's what we did. And so that was a wrapper. And then, but we did experiment with things like trying to embed code into the application. And now you're really getting to what is serious hacking, right? Because now
Okay.
it's like, so now I really figure out how programs. I learned a bunch about like just how programs really put together. What can we put in there? Can we put in new icons? How I rip stuff out? It was kind of fun, and there was dead ends and other stuff. So that was
Sure.
kind of interesting. Interesting. I could talk forever about that. But eventually the dot-com bubble burst, right? And so that happened, and all these ads that were getting, dollars on clicks are now getting pennies on the dollar of clicks, and the model wasn't there. And so that company shut down. So I actually helped shut down the company, file all the patent, like do all that kind of stuff. So it was a very interesting experience for me. And this is the
Yeah.
first, now this is the first, another major fork in my career. So the owner of that, Marty, had a company called Cyber CFO down in Virginia. He wanted me to go down there, and I just had our first child. And one of the things from there is I'd spent like there was like four of us that wrote a program trying to write a free ISP, like
Yeah.
with Yahoo. So we were trying
Oh,
to do that and try to do something like, and we did all this, but then it failed away. But I worked for like 4 months straight, almost every day, and was
wow.
just working crazy hours. And I knew it would be like that. And I just had a child, and moving down to Virginia with Tracy, I didn't want to do that to her. I didn't want to move her somewhere where she didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
And so this is the first decision of family over career. And so I'm like, okay, I need to prioritize my family right now. We moved close to be closer to her parents to have support. Moved to Connecticut, and I actually had started interviewing with Nasdaq, and I also interviewed with the Hartford. And Nasdaq's actually where I wanted to work. I interviewed, but I hadn't heard back. I didn't know what was going on. And the Hartford offered me a job, which was very interesting. I was interested in the job as well. It was with a reinsurance part of the Hartford, which was interesting. It's insurance for insurance. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a fascinating, interesting kind of thing. So I thought it was pretty cool. And so I'd accepted the Hartford job, and then Nasdaq comes back and offers me a job. And so what do? I'd already given my word to the Hartford. And this is the thing about it being a man of your word. And so
Yeah.
I turned down the other job, which I probably would have taken if they were like both offered at the same time, to keep my word.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's just things work out. And this is another thing kind of looking at life dealt me this, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, I must be need to be here.
Clearly wasn't necessarily a misstep because you were with the Hartford from then up to only recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned a lot, but I get there, and then all of a sudden, within a couple of months, 9/11 happens, and I'm faced with like again shutting the business down. So
Wait a minute, Greg. Let me ask you something. So, if you had taken the Nasdaq, would you have been working in the World Trade Center? Would you have been in New York?
no, it was
No. Okay.
it was still in Connecticut where I'd have been working.
Okay. Would have been in
But
Hartford?
At Hartford, where I was, people were across this. They were in building. What's the other building that fell across the way?
I
Building
forget.
5. But anyway, during that time, I mean, I'm working with people that have good friends who died in 9/11. I mean, they
Oh
were all
wow.
right there, and so it was a major thing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I took this job. One, I was a stable company. I wanted to raise a family. I wanted to have time for my children. I, wanted to coach their soccer teams, be den
Yeah.
leader, do all those kind of things. And
Yeah.
so this afforded me, to be able to give it my all in a company, but still have time for my family and have a balanced life. And so that was what was important to me. But my passion, as you look at that and kind of get out to this next phase of this next career, is really around people. You can see I have a technology piece, but what's made me successful in all these places has not just been my technical capabilities. It's been my ability to have people work together. And so
Yeah.
to build teams that can accomplish fun and cool things. And how do we do those things and
Let,
build those together?
Greggy, let's drill into that just for a second. So, what is it that you think makes your style and your approach work? What do you do that makes the teams work? And if you didn't do that, or if you did something different, it might not work as well. What's the secret
Well,
sauce that you've noticed that really contributes to team function?
yeah, there's a couple things. First of all, I'll have to say this. So you kind of get into leadership when you're looking at this to begin with, right? So we're talking about leadership and how do we have teams, whether you're a member of a team being a leader or whether you're a official or not official member of a team. And part of that There's themes I think that work, but there's also an authenticity, right? And so it's about connecting with people and people knowing and trusting you at the end of the day. That's unique, right? Because we all have our different abilities. We all have the different things that are out there. But people want to know a couple things. One, that you care about them.
Yeah.
They want to be listened to. They want to matter. They want to be empowered. They want to contribute, right? They want to, they want to do those things. So how do you get that out of people in a team? It is about, at the end of the day, I guess it's really about being able to communicate in ways that people trust you, and recognizing potential in people, giving people opportunity, giving them feedback, giving them both the good and bad in those feedback, but doing them in constructive ways that are not demoralizing, but in ways that are motivational. Even tough messages I've given people, people have thanked me, and I've done it in ways I think that people feel respected with and still felt valued.
Yeah, that's to me, the more I sort of dive into the dynamics of what it is to be human, it seems like the indispensable feature is respect, self-respect and respect for others. If you have it, you're in business. If you don't have it, you're in trouble. It's almost as clear as that, it seems.
Right.
And so my question then is, how do managers, like if you look around your peers, your people above, below, side of other companies, you've interacted with managers and leaders that weren't able to necessarily create the best dynamics on teams. Probably some of that is with the respect aspect of it, but my question is, what goes wrong? What are they focused on that makes it so that they're not as respectful or as communicative in the way that you're talking about, Greg?
I think a lot of the traps that people fall in, and I mean, obviously, you read leadership books and you read things, you see lots of examples of these things. The first one is, I would say, is ego oriented, right? So things
Yeah.
are being driven for them and their career and what makes them look better. So they're selfishly being motivated, right? So people make decisions and do those things by that.
So in
The
those
second,
cases, they're actually just the fact of the matter is they actually don't care about the people.
exactly, they'll care
Yeah.
about some of the people,
Okay,
right?
so they
So
might have
so
favorites.
so
They
they
care
might
about
have
some,
favorites.
and if
Exactly.
you,
So
you
now there's
make the list,
variants of this. Exactly. Where
you
there's
make the list,
you
you're on. If you don't, you're
and,
disposable.
and you think about that, and a lot of these things have truth behind them. That's why people act this way, right? If you have a team of people that aren't capable of competing, and you're never going to get them to compete, the problem.
Yeah.
You're not serving the team's goal well, right? So there's reasons that are like that, but you can also be the other side where you have all these A players who all can't meet and work together, and they can't communicate and can't do anything, and they suck as a team.
Yeah.
It's not. All these things are continuums of what's uniqueness about that stuff and what really makes that those teams gel and jam. And so it's about finding those things, and what gets in the way of those things: reality, problems, deadlines, external pressures for trying to get stuff done, people issues and people conflicts. People can't talk. They look at things differently. They look at the world differently. They don't feel listened to. They get treated the wrong way. How do you go against those things? And building trust of those things as you build the teams that care about each other.
Well, that's you said something that we talked about numerous times. You said gel and jam, right? And we've talked about the jam gene in the past. I think we
Yeah.
even did a episode way back on the jam gene. The concept of that is jamming is listening to the other people, the musicians that you're playing with, and reacting and having musical conversations back and forth that are engaging and interesting. Would you add anything to that as definition of jamming, Greg?
Yeah, no, I think that's right, Tom. It's about the harmony of the creation of where you're going, and in jamming, it's like you don't control it, right? So it's about
Right.
unleashing the things of listening to other people and making the harmony out of what other people are doing, and giving the ability to influence what's being done. Whereas
That's
lots of
crucial. What you just said, see, really kind of big exclamation point to me came up because you said you don't control it. When it's all ego, when it's all my contribution, was what I did, give me my feather and my cap, you're not jamming, right? You're not co-creating. You're trying to control. You're trying to steer things in the way that you think. And just by doing that, you're discordant. You're crowding people out. You're no longer in a symphonic cooperation. You're now just singing, and it doesn't matter what your melody is, and it doesn't whether it fits with everybody else. It's not. Problem with that is no one wants to listen to that. It's not useful.
Yeah, and you can't have chaos either, right? So you can't have all this, unharmonized things that people aren't listening to each other and what's going on. And so, about creating teams and about creating mission is understanding what you're serving. What are you serving?
So in other words, the mission.
What's the mission exactly? And
This is
and
a
how are you going to do that? And the funny thing is that missions need to change. That's a problem, right? That's a problem. When is it supposed to change? Who gets to decide how does it change? It's a big problem.
well, especially for somebody who has made it their entire life's purpose on this previous one. They're going to resist the
Exactly.
new mission, and it might be time for them to choose another team to be on if they don't
Right.
want to necessarily forego that, or if their
Right.
personal mission no longer aligns with a shared mission.
But that's what environments do to us, right? What was working doesn't work well before. Conditions change. Businesses have to face that, and teams have to face that. One of
Yeah.
the things I've always talked about is entropy happens. Things will fall apart. You need to constantly reinvent, come up with new ways of doing things, and look at it because conditions don't remain the same, or life is constantly changing.
Life is inconvenient.
It is inconvenient. It is absolutely inconvenient.
So you had a career with the Hartford that you kind of rose and got promotions and more and more responsibility. Let's talk about sort of the end of that and then into the next chapter, Greg.
Yeah, yeah, really, when I look at the end of the chapter there, it's kind of just looking at where the company was going and what I was bringing to the table and looking at that, they were just not the same. What the company wanted and was looking at that and how they were wanting to manage and look at things wasn't quite how I was seeing things. No hard feelings of any kind with anybody. It just wasn't where I wanted to be and kind of felt I needed a change. And so again, the world happens, things happen for a reason. You kind of look at that stuff, and the world was telling me it was time to change. And when that happened, I was fortunate enough that you were in kind of another situation as well. You're trying to build a new business that was coming up, and as you said, Tom, I bring a lot of different types of things to the table, but the mission's very similar in all of this, and my passion fully aligns with what we're doing.
When I remember the dinner that you and I were at together when I was going into some of the specifics on the Aya Power model, and I was
Hmm.
getting your energy. You were really, it was clicking for you. It made sense to
Yeah,
you based on your experience. And I remember the word you said, something to the effect of like, I'm in on this. And I'm like, I couldn't believe, I mean, I was so happy. And so like, I wasn't thinking that was a possibility necessarily. I was just, we're brothers. I'm just sharing in my journey, so what was it that you said, man, this is aligned. This is the thing that I'm going to put myself into next. Because I
yeah.
mean, I feel so honored and so blessed that you thought
It
that. But
really
yeah.
it really
So
comes it really comes to the mission. I mean, my passion has always been around helping teams really and building teams and accomplishing those things. And this is at the heart of that. This is the heart of culture. This is at the heart of how do we work together as people? How do you
yeah,
I mean, it's both an individual thing but it's also a team thing, right? You have to look at, what I love about the Eye of Power is the lenses that you have to look through.
yeah.
All these multiple tiers, all these multiple things you need to look at, and that just resonated with me as we look at this and believe in the mission. And so the idea that I could help and influence companies and help influence culture, just an amazing thing to do at my point in my where I am in my career and my life. So it just felt right.
It's funny because when I first started thinking about the model, I was thinking at the individual level, really. I was thinking about
Yeah,
how hard it is to make a change. And I always say, you ever make a New Year's resolution and not keep it? And almost everybody can relate to that. And the idea is why? Why can't we do that? And so because if you think about it, if you can't do that, it means that you've got a little bit of ways to go to have all of your agency, all of your personal power. You don't really have all of your power. And we're all sort of in that boat. And I just thought, man,
yeah,
it could be better. It could be different than that. Doesn't We don't have to be slaves to habit or slaves to those parts of us that we feel like we've grown past or we would like to grow past, and not necessarily disrespect that part of ourselves, but recognize, as you were just saying, with how group dynamics are with changing missions, we have changing seasons in our lives. And if we hold on to models that are no longer serving us, well, we struggle, right? We keep hitting our head on the same bar.
Yep. And recognizing those things are can be difficult at times, right? And that's why having
It's
people around you is important, and really your ability to listen and your ability to be open and receptive to what's going on is important.
Well, yeah, that is the key. And of course, I came through it with the interpersonal communications being the
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah.
And the things that help and the things that hurt us in those interchanges. And of course, everything starts right here, right? Everything's
Exactly.
everything's here, and for good, for better and worse. The idea is we don't know what we don't know, and
Yep.
so we all need help. For
Yep.
our works in progress, we all need help. So and there's no
And
shortage of that help.
I think one of the things underlying all of these things for teams is like is it kind of gets back to what I said before about change is that we all need to continue growing. The world's
Yeah.
dynamic, all this stuff needs to happen, and creating environments where that people can see that because it's tough. A lot of people, change is difficult. People want things to be the same. We have a hard time dealing with that. And there's lots of people that have a difficult time with that. There's a lot of identity gets wrapped up into what I did, what's out there, what was the things that we did, and then to move somewhere else. The challenge that is for management, for teams, and the rest of that. And so it's this constant interplay of these dynamics of maximizing what I have. How do I change the future? It's very interesting, and it's very fascinating to me.
Or
Um,
you can fall into the trap of if you've got a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, that sort of thing.
exactly.
And you can also fall into the opposite side of that might be dropping what you're doing every moment to chase the bright, shiny object. And that can be a trap too, right?
Oh, exactly. And unfortunately, I think that happens a lot. To be honest, I mean, I look out their lives like you're not getting their turn on what you're doing. You're looking at the next thing before it's out there. But all these things are like the decisions of your life. They're all a balance. Like these things are difficult. These decisions are not, there's not always right answers in those things and a lot of those things. And that's why you got to listen. And that's why you got to maximize what's out there with a team.
So,
And
as you know, our prescription in the eye of power is, to look, to pay attention, to do it
that's
as a habit, right? To do it as a
exactly,
natural thing that you're constantly doing. If you do
exactly
that, you're going to minimize those traps that you fall into. We're not saying it's going to do away with them, of course, right? It's just you're
right.
going to spend less time there. You're going to move further faster, right?
What I also love about it too is when you look at these things, it naturally leads you for having to solve these problems of growth, understanding other people,
Yeah.
um, becoming more, have a better emotional quotient,
Yep.
understand how people, it naturally leads you to have to look and do all those things in life.
I'm glad you mentioned the emotional quotient because that really is, we think about the gifts that we're given, right? And
Right.
you know, you're a smart guy, you're able to sort of get it yourself a TI 99 and figure out how to make games. And not everybody could do that. That takes a little bit of raw sort of processing power that you were gifted. But no matter who you are, no matter what your gifts happen to be, you can always get better as it relates to recognizing and your emotions and the emotions of others, and responding in more powerful ways,
Right.
in higher quality ways. That's like a skill that all of us can work on and get better. And the correlation between high levels of skill in those areas and success, no matter how you want to measure it, is extremely high. So it's a very, very good investment for an individual, or for really, I'd say, any team, to pay attention to these things in a systematic, constant, never to be ignored sort of a way. What do you think of
Yeah.
that, Greg?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's an element of that. You look at that, and as you were talking, I was just thinking about some of the things I learned on as I quickly noticed in my management career. And I think I was one of these type of people is like I call them multipliers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not only are they good themselves, they make everybody else around them better.
Yeah.
And that's what, at the end of the day, that leads you by making yourself better. If you're really open, look at stuff, you're making everybody else better around you. That's the scale, that's the logarithmic scale of really creating teams that really can start accomplishing a lot better stuff because you're getting everybody to grow in harmony with this stuff, looking at that. And so I call them the multiplier people. And
Yeah.
so and some of that stuff can be taught. Some of that's learned behavior. Some of it's not.
So let's look a little bit. So that kind of, I mean, it was a very cursory kind of view, but I think we've got a narrative thread there. My question now is, What are you seeing ahead of us? We've got some pilots going. We're iterating. We're learning. We've got a lot to learn yet. We're in an exciting period where we're still sort of not really knowing where this is going to go and how it's going to look. What are you seeing? What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to as it relates to what we're doing together in the Eye of Power as a enterprise, Greg?
Well, I think the stages we talked about kind of look at what's out there, but what gets me jazzed up about this, like I said before, is the ability to influence organizations. To have a change in the natural culture of how teams and management can view how teams can work together. And if that's a mark that could be left or move the meter on, I am all for it. And I think that's something that we need more in the world, whether it's even in there or even how we work and work together and how we think of working together. So that's a huge, so to me, what gets me excited is having any possibility of making the world a better place around that really excites me.
Yes, hey, we're definitely aligned there, no question. I see it as the tyranny of the to-do list, right? There's never,
Exactly.
no matter what your situation is, there's never an end to all the things you could do, and all of them are valid. So everybody feels busy, squeezed, maximum bandwidth. And
Yeah.
so, but of course, this is an illusion, right? This is a story because some things matter more than other things, right? Some things you ignore at your peril. Other things can just freaking wait. That you don't. They're not. They really don't matter that much.
That
Way
makes me
less.
think of two things that I tell people, when early people come on, early career people, I say, listen, there's more things not getting done than getting done,
Yeah.
right? I said, look around you. There's bubbles everywhere of stuff that can be done better. Looks like anything you want to get noticed, do your job and figure out some other stuff out there. You're going to get noticed. That's the first thing that I tell people to look at, because now you're looking at how am I making things better? How am I really participating? How am I growing stuff? Like that's kind of a key element. Do your job, but also look what's out there to be done. And you're going to get noticed.
In that sort of pedaling the bike, head down, get it done, get her done kind of a mentality, the thing that you can't ignore is what we were talking about a minute ago, which is your own um, harmony, right? Your
Yeah,
own balance, your own development, your own path through this world, and realizing that that work of becoming the fullest expression of the more fully expressed version of you is your work, regardless of
yeah,
the specific path you're on. That's your actual work in life.
yeah.
And that's a little bit of a ethical or moral or religious sort of, let's call it a precept, but that's what we're based on, right? That's
Yeah.
best I can tell. That's what leads towards the greatest level of fulfillment that we can find.
Yep. Yep. I would always tell people my favorite things are the things that we are the favorite work that's done is the work that's not done, the work that didn't need to be done. Don't stop doing it. So right, all this waste and stuff that we do, that's my favorite stuff that people doing is the stuff that they don't have. Stop doing what you don't have to do. Figure out
Yeah,
stuff that we don't have to do.
yeah. I mean, you're kind of clearing the picture up, right? Because there's a lot of fuzz. It's fuzz on
There's
the lens.
things like, why are we doing this? Like we don't have to do this.
There's,
Stop.
there's a
Find those
lot
things you don't have to do anymore, and we do it because it made sense at one point in the past, but it doesn't make any sense now. Like, but we get
of.
built into these archetypes of behaviors and archetypes of process that made sense at one point, and people do. Why are you doing it? I don't know. I keep doing it. Do it. That's why I need to
I'm
keep doing it.
supposed to. I know that much.
Right? Exactly.
My bonus is tied to this metric.
Exactly.
Well, by way of sort of landing the plane, Greg, is there something else that you think we should kind of steer into? It seems like we went through a bit of a chronological kind of a
No,
review.
I think we've covered what I hope to have a good theme here for this, Tom. I feel like we've covered the ground for this. I think this is a good ending. I think we ended
The
in the
one
right way.
the one thing that I also have to acknowledge you for is the power of partnership, because we got one very important partnership
Mhm.
that we're pursuing, and another potential one that very recently in the picture that we've actually, as we were recording this, it was just a few days ago that we had our first sort of meeting together.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it'll go. It's promising, But you've been you've brought both those partnerships to the table. So I have to acknowledge your ability to appreciate and recognize and be attractive to very high quality uh, potential partners that
Oh,
share
thank
that mission, right? That share that wanting to elevate the human condition in as
you.
big a
Yeah,
way as we can. And so I
yeah.
have to give you that huge
I
accolade.
appreciate that, Tom. It's funny because I've had some people, and there's one person in particular I remember hiring. They told me, Greg, I didn't come to the company with Hartford. I came to work with you.
Ah, yeah.
I'm like,
It's the
wow,
people.
like that was like one of the biggest compliments I ever got from somebody was like, it's like, you know, was that I know we would do great things. Like I know I'd learn. I know I would be fulfilled and I would grow. And they got that from an interview, for an hour talking to me.
Well, it might be a little sidebar, but I think it's worth going because I remember when it was time for you to sort of part ways with the Hartford, and it was a little bit of a seesaw kind of a thing where they at first they were like okay, and secondly they may change your mind and like keep you like it wasn't super clear to all parties involved
Right.
as to
No,
what the
but
best path was. But when it got announced that you were actually going to leave, you were
yeah,
surprised by the reaction that people had around you.
I
And
was. I was.
so I often tell this story because I think it's very important for people. It kind of reminds me of "It's a Wonderful Life," the theme of "It's a
Yeah.
Wonderful Life," where we don't really know the impact that we have, and George gets the great gift
Right.
from Clarence gives him this great gift to be able to see his effect, and most of us don't get that, but you got a little glimpse of that as you left, with people reaching out. Do you want to share that,
Yeah.
or am I embarrassing you too much?
No, no, no. I don't mind sharing. I mean, I'd say the theme of it all was just how many people reached out to me and shared with me what impact I had upon them,
Yeah,
and how great that made me feel. In other ways, in terms of whether it was an opportunity I gave them, whether it was encouragement I gave them, whether it was feedback I gave them, whether it was I believed them. But the one thing that they always loved was the sense of team and the sense of like in terms of what we're looking at, sense of team and the sense of growth.
yeah.
And
And
so
that's a universal, isn't it? Isn't that a
it's universal.
universal? We wanna belong, and we wanna evolve and belong to a group that's helping us do that, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and
So,
and it comes down to leadership. Leadership's
yeah,
either gonna nourish that or squash it.
yeah. And so, like you said, Tom, it was a very humbling thing for me, and it made me feel, brought back things to me that sometimes it's going through a tumultuous period, like you said, and it was just one of those really good feelings, and one of those things that, and it also helped cement from in my decision of what I was doing too. It was like it was time. It was like
Yeah.
this was all more signs that it was time for me. It was my time to go find something new.
Yeah.
And to start putting my gift somewhere else, which is what we're doing now. I'm super
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I mean, it's nice to reap the rewards of something that's sort of flying and complete, but I actually do like the creation point, the time where we are right now, where we don't know what this thing's gonna be yet. And
This is fun. This is fun time. This is where the possibilities happen and kind of what's
yeah,
going on. And like you said, we've got good partners, good people around us, business partners, hopefully, and other clients that we get. I'm excited about our future clients as well.
yeah, me too. Well, Greg, thanks so much. It's been fantastic. I'm absolutely completely biased in this assessment because you're somebody I love probably as much as I love anybody, and so to be here with you today, be hooked together in our business, that we're brothers in life, and all of that is one of the biggest blessings that I
Uh,
could possibly ever
the
hope
sentiment
for.
is exactly the same from my side as well, Tom. And I'm so excited. Obviously, an older brother, been a role model in a lot of ways for me, and super excited on your talents that you bring to this world and helping to be a part of adding that to the world is just it's quite an opportunity and quite a blessing.
Thanks, Greg.
So
Greg, thanks again so much for being with me today. And, obviously we're working together. So, full disclosure, we have vested interests in success here. And so that makes sense that you would help me out this way. But having the conversation, putting it in the perspective that we just did, reinforces to me why I'm so thrilled and why I'm feel so humbled that you're on the team and that what you bring to the table is really a very needed ingredient. And the fact that we have always, worked together, whether it be our family dynamics, whether it be playing music together. We've always spoken the same language, and that even in those unspoken languages, we just had sort of a special bond. And to be able to work in the world of work where we're helping people and teams do the same for themselves just feels like kind of a culmination of a lot of things that have built up over really decades. And to be at this place is really, truly exciting, humbling, blessing. It feels like I'm so grateful for it. And just it feels very fulfilling and very happy. So very, very thankful for what you bring to the table and some of the things that you shared with the people today uh, about the your dynamics with how teams function and how it comes down to respect, communication, making people feel seen, felt, heard, working together, being open to the possibilities of what are we creating together, being having fealty to a mission, but also realizing that the conditions change. So, yes, we are on this mission together, but we're also open to the new and the and we can jam, we can take in some input from somebody else and react accordingly in a harmonic way. And so that spirit, I think, is very important, no matter what you're doing in life. So I think that's a great lesson, a great takeaway. So thanks again, Greg. And thank you for being with us today, the I Power podcast.
This has been the Eye of Power podcast with Tom Dardick. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd also like to thank my brother Scott Dardick for the music and his music production. If you'd like to reach me, simply email Tom at dardickcommunications.com.